This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, welcome to a new edition of Behind the Headlines, a production of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. I'm pleased today to be joined by my co-host, Jerry Strittmatter. Nice to see you, Jerry. Thank you for joining me today. Charlie Greenwald is on assignment, so I appreciate your time of being here. And
always happy to. Thank you very much.
We're going to talk about one of your favorite subjects, I know, which is transportation. And to join us today, we have Mr. Bob Latham, who is the Executive Vice President of the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors.
That's correct.
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
And we've got a new year, new road things going on, new safety issues, and so we wanted to kick off some discussion on what's happening with transportation issues.
Well, wonderful. As you know, at the end of 2013, we finally passed what we call comprehensive transportation funding legislation here in Pennsylvania. I've spent made a number of trips around the country talking about it with other states, and one thing I can say is that it is precedent setting. No other state is looking at that level of comprehensive nature of funding, and I think that citizens of the Commonwealth, transportation users, whether it be highways, public transit, or alternative transportation vehicles like walking and biking, can look for a new elevated level of service, safety, and convenience in their communities. We're starting to see projects move throughout the Commonwealth, and I think we're going to see good things ahead for transportation in Pennsylvania as a result of this.
There should be a plethora of things going on in the spring as the weather warms up.
Absolutely, absolutely. Last year we spent a lot of time just doing paving work, repairing roads that we had a particularly brutal winter last year, and we had to fix that up. Now we're going to be looking to move on to some other things.
As you said, it really was monumental. I'm glad to know that the other states see that. And take our example, which we've always been a leader, being the Keystone State.
Right.
And it was monumental more in our viewers. When everyone else was worried about gridlock and can't get things done, all four caucuses and the governor worked together. Democrat caucus in the House and Senate, Democrat caucus, Republican caucus, governor Republican, all five worked together to have this comprehensive plan actually go forward. And it was a lot of hard work, and it was tough for those people to do it. So I'm glad you brought that up, Bob.
Yeah, I think it was the critical accomplishment of the 2-year legislative session that ended last fall. And of course, I think along with building Pennsylvania as probably one of the energy capitals of the world, it'll be one of former Governor Corbett's legacies, obviously.
Yeah, it certainly was unprecedented.
Mm-hmm.
So as you look to 2015, in this new year that we're in, what can you expect out of Governor Wolf in terms of support for transportation issues, and just in general, what's the relationship going to be like?
Well, I think in conversations we've had with Governor Wolf, either during the campaign or his speeches during the campaign or meetings we've had subsequently from the election, he's always indicated that he was a supporter of Act 89, but is looking for other things that we might be able to do. I think he's very much interested in some large projects, some big picture things involving the port system and our geographic location as the Keystone State. A number of states, and now Pennsylvania, I think under Governor Wolf, will be looking at things called inland ports. An inland port is simply a staging area for logistics. And when you look at where we are with access to the ports of Philadelphia, Newark, and New York, and our highway system and our rail system coming from Baltimore and from Virginia, and also we don't want to forget Lake Erie, and then the river locks and dam system in Pittsburgh. we're perfectly suited for something like this. And we've had some preliminary conversations with Wolf administration officials on this concept of an inland port, which I think makes sense for Pennsylvania. It would be a job creator, and it would, again, take advantage of our system here.
And following through with that, with the new administration, also with the legislature, being sworn in last month, that with new transportation committee members and chairmen, I know they've always worked well with you in the past. What kind of things, priorities, are you talking to them about that you would like to see them considering?
Well, both Republican Chairman, Majority Chairman John Taylor, and Minority Chairman Bill Keller, both being from Philadelphia. Obviously, the Port of Philadelphia and those issues are near and dear to their hearts. And I think that looking at some of those issues that make mobility easier in and around communities, looking at some of the trail system, bike trails. Philadelphia is one of the most bike user-friendly and also use of bicycles, I guess, for not just pleasure, but for commuting as well. And looking at those alternatives can make urban areas even more viable and even more interesting for people to live. And it also cuts down on congestion. So it's all sort of part of a total mobility strategy.
I'd ride a bike too if I could stay off the Schuylkill Expressway.
Right. Well, I guess that down along the river there, I guess, is another route, and they're looking at some things there. We've been talking to some of the Montgomery County, we've talked to Montgomery County commissioners, and they're looking at projects in and around Norristown and that sort of thing. But not to get not too Philadelphia centric. I think that both of those chairs have a statewide view and will be interested in moving things forward, perhaps such as the project we just talked about. The other thing that we do want to discuss, and we've been talking to both of them about, is safety in highway work zones. This is going to be a big issue going forward because we're not building many new projects, what we call greenfield projects. We're not, plowing up unbuilt areas and putting in new roads. We're repairing the ones we have. We have an old system. We have to repair these bridges, fix roads, in some cases expand them. And what we're looking at now is a system of speed control through work zones that has been used in Maryland very successfully for a number of years. It's automated speed enforcement, which is very similar to red light cameras, and it's been very successful in Maryland in terms of depressing the level of speed going through work zones. Wow. It's a very dangerous situation. And it's not just for the workers, it's for the people who are driving through those work zones, because the majority of the accidents and the injuries are not necessarily the people working there, although we're obviously, as a construction industry, very interested in the safety of the people who do the fine work in making these roads safer for people to drive, but it's also the motorists that get injured when they speed through these work zones. The lanes shift. There's
slow-moving traffic.
There's slow-moving traffic in some cases.
Appropriately moving traffic.
So trying to get people to recognize that just slowing down a little bit will save a lot of lives and a lot of property. Maryland's system has worked well. I think we're looking at that here.
Do you think you need legislation for that?
Yes, I think we do.
The funding, or would that be part of what's already out there?
No, it would be part of the project funding. The other thing is, there have been some critics of automated traffic enforcement, and unfortunately, in some areas, it's been used as a revenue generator. Maryland's fine. It's very small, but it's compounded. It gets a little. It's enough to encourage you not to speed through. And I don't. Again, we're not looking at it, or nobody's looking at it as a revenue source. We just got one, so we're looking at it as a way to save lives, both of workers and motorists.
So tell us what's going on the federal level. Are there any issues, transportation issues that you're following, interested in?
Yeah, we've just talked about the positive side
Yes.
of transportation funding. Now let's go to the other side of the coin. And unfortunately, in Congress, they've had a preponderance of minor extensions of federal funding. It's important to note that in Pennsylvania, of our construction money, what we call capital funds, as opposed to operating, and operating would be, having the Motor Vehicle Administration available to take your licenses and the guys out there plowing snow, that's operations. The construction is the actual building of stuff. And almost half of the money that we have available for that construction portion comes from the National or the Federal Highway Trust Fund. And that has to be reauthorized, if you will, and funded in the same way we do our Pennsylvania fund here. Well, okay, that's due May 31st, and nobody seems to have an idea of what we're going to do with that or how we can fix it. Basically, at the national level, about 25% of it is underfunded right now, so they've got about a $16–17 billion a year gap between what's taken in by the federal gas tax and what is actually needed to spend. And everything we've seen here to date is we don't know what we're going to do. Nobody wants to make the hard choices that former Governor Corbett and the Pennsylvania legislature made. Nobody wants to make those choices in Congress, and so we'll see.
Is this another cliff we're going to go over?
Oh yeah, we have yes.
We'll have to name it. Let's name it right here now.
Yeah, this is the Highway Trust Fund cliff. May 31st is the deadline. They've been using what I call smoke and mirrors to kind of patch the thing together. The last cliff was last August, and now we're here to May 31st. And once again, the idea of really facing the issue is, I'm not seeing it yet. Yeah. It's very disappointing.
Oh, it's early.
Well, yeah, it's true.
That's the problem.
Well,
it's
that's
early.
true. It's only.
It's not May 25th yet.
Yeah, we've got several more months.
Yes.
Yeah, it's unfortunate when it takes years and years of planning, and you need to phase these things in, and so you just can't do this.
Jerry, you hit the nail right on the head. That is the problem.
You need to have predictability in what you're doing, and maybe there's some opportunities, for our viewers, to know about with the problems they have in Washington. Maybe are you working on other things that would help us as a state with relieving us of some of the issues that they've held us up to, like with the public-private partnerships, of doing things, tolling of different roads, different things that the federal government, even though we made these great strides before, we have to look forward. Where are we going to be 4 or 5 years from now? Maybe we can use this, and our viewers can use it, talking to their congressman, and that to relieve us, allow us to have the flexibility that the federal government hasn't always given us here in Pennsylvania. Do you think that's an idea worth pursuing?
Well, let's take tolling, for example. One of the things, there is sort of a prohibition against tolling the interstate highway system. And brief history, the interstate highway system was built by the states. It's owned by the states, but it was funded from the federal government. So they basically said, here's the road. Now it's yours, and you pay for the maintenance of it. And oh, by the way, here it is in 1965 condition, and here we are, a few years later, needs to be built to 2015 standards, and it's all on us. So a lot of the states have said, well, let us toll the interstate because that'll remove that burden. I think that's going to get some consideration. That's a piece of the puzzle. One of the things I didn't mention earlier is that on top of the program that we have going on funded through Act 89 is this 600 bridge public-private partnership project that will be built over 3 years, and that's another way to go about things. I have to remember that it's essentially a financing mechanism. It's not a funding mechanism. The financiers of those projects are in business to make money, which is okay with me. I mean, you know, I'm a proponent of the market system, but it's not free money.
Well, as we close out our segment here, which they're always way too short, tell us what kind of job impact the funding is going to have on 2015, and also where can people go to find and learn more about the issues you're working on? Oh, sure.
Well, I'll start with where to go.
Okay.
Our website is www.pahighwayinfo.org. Okay. pahighwayinfo.org. You could spend literally hours on there looking at various studies that we have posted and sign up for an ongoing newsletter that just kind of keeps everybody up to date on transportation issues, both at the state and national level. On the jobs side, it's already had tremendous impact. We're seeing small engineering firms that have doubled in size from 35 to 70 employees already. We're seeing as the gas industry sort of winds down a little bit, all those jobs are coming back to the construction side. And actually, one of our challenges going forward are going to be finding good CDL truck drivers. So if you have any of your listeners out there that are looking for, that are truck drivers looking for work, contact your nearest highway construction company. We're looking for good CDL drivers.
Well, thank you very much, and we look forward to having you back later in the year. Thank you, Jerry, for co-hosting with me today.
You bet.
And we'll be back. We'll be back for another segment of Behind the Headlines right after this.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, helping hospitals provide healing, health, and hope to communities across the state. And by the Pennsylvania Business Council, envisioning a commonwealth in which residents enjoy a very high quality of life in sustainable communities. The Council works aggressively to define key long-term policy strategies and solutions to make the Commonwealth more competitive, creating and sustaining a better Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by Daily Express, transporting construction, farm, and industrial equipment throughout the United States, and by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org.
Hi, welcome back to this segment of Behind the Headlines. On this segment of Behind the Headlines, I'm joined by Edward Arnold, the chair of Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and of course one of the most successful business people in Pennsylvania history, who had been the former owner of Arnold Trucking and New Penn Trucking and Arnold Logistics until just a few years ago. And we're going to do a new Arnold report. We have some new questions that have been sent in to ask Mr. Arnold. And again, we ask all of the viewers to go ahead and please send in your questions for Mr. Arnold to the email that's listed below on the screen. This particular time, Ed, we have 5 questions that have come in. And let's start out with these. The first one is, this person must have been reading a lot of Ron Paul over the years. Do you believe America should keep the Federal Reserve System, or should we abolish it, as Representative Paul argued in the past?
I believe we should keep it. I think our economic system has become very complicated. I think one of the problems is it's not accountable. It should be accountable to somebody. It should be audited. It is definitely a needed, but there's got to be a check and balance on its control and power.
Okay. The second question is, should I invest in one of the funds that invests in the purchase of prime agricultural farmland?
Well, if you're talking about buying farmland itself, as opposed to a fund or something, I don't know. It's very difficult to invest in farmland.
I think they're talking about a fund, Ed.
Well, that's the thing. Is I don't know of any real fund. The only one that was out there, it was a very large minimum and it's closed. So basically, it is a good idea. Farmland will, in the long run, appreciate because obviously food is always going to be in demand. At the same time, the structure of it, the price of it, the illiquidity of it are all things you'd have to consider very carefully.
Okay. Question number 3. Why are the Russians buying such large amounts of gold, and how will their plans affect me as an individual investor?
I don't believe they will affect you directly at all. As far as what I've been able to find is the gold that Russia is buying is their own mine gold. Russia is a large producer of gold. And because of the sanctions, right now they have trouble selling in the open market, so they're buying it themselves. I don't think it is a major effect on the world gold supply.
What about the gold that China is buying?
That is a big deal, and I personally think that China is accumulating. First of all, they are the world's largest producer of gold. They buy all that, plus they're importing a tremendous amount. A lot that we know through Hong Kong and a lot that we don't know through other sources. The supply of gold in the world is definitely, it's a little confusing because you have gold and then you have paper gold, and it seems paper gold is questionable at this point if they're not creating it.
Okay. Question number 3. What changes should I be making in my investment strategy based on the decline in oil prices? Of course, we've seen this is a big item in the news. Petroleum has come way down from where it had been. How should the individual investor respond to that?
Well, basically, I would say this is a tremendous opportunity. We always have that saying, you buy low and sell high. Well, most of the time when you find something you really like, it's already high. Now, there is also the saying that you buy high and sell higher. But the thing is, right now with oil, there's a tremendous opportunity. Oil's not going away. The price of oil will bounce back. Exactly when, we're not quite sure, but it probably fairly, let's say within a year. It'll find out whether it's going to be quite as high, but it's going to be a lot higher than it is today. Oil stocks, depending on the company, and we'll talk about a couple, have been really knocked down hard. So basically, it's a tremendous chance to buy low.
And petroleum isn't used, of course, just for purposes of energy, but it's used as, for example, as a component part of, for example, plastics.
That is correct. One of the big positives of American oil prices being lower, but specifically gas prices, is that therefore we are rejuvenating our manufacturing of a lot of things that use natural gas or oil as a base material because we have a good supply.
Well, the 5th and final question, and this may take up the bulk of the time, Ed, is what recommendations would you make for investments in this new year of 2015? What looks good on the horizon? How should the individual investor approach this new landscape, economic landscape in 2015?
Well, now, therefore, again, back to what you said, I think the oil right now is the most interesting, not that there aren't some others, because of their lowering, their prices are all down. Now, we still get back to that word called risk. Obviously, if you were risk adverse, you want to buy someone that does not have the risk to fail or the risk to really get hit hard. Taking oil, Exxon. They were actually the second largest country in the world, $280 billion market, $380 billion, I'm sorry, market cap. Their stock has only dropped about 10%, 15%, but it'll only recover that amount. So yes, you have no risk in it, and it also pays a 3% dividend. But therefore your reward won't be as great. Now there's another company I've followed, which is a company called EOG Resources. This is one of the largest. It still has a $50 billion market cap, a company in America that is an oil drilling company. They have a very strong positive cash flow. They're not leveraged very hard. But their stock has fallen like 25%.
Do they drill across the globe or just in
They're
America?
primarily America. They do have things in Canada. They do actually do some drilling in China. But they're primarily American. Very heavily Texas, actually. So basically, here's a company that it hasn't dropped as hard, and it'll also recover similar. So therefore, and there's no dividend though in this company, which is another factor. But it is big opportunity the company would have is because it is strong financially. As a lot of these weaker companies get in real trouble, which they are right now, they could buy things up for pennies on the dollar. So they have a good growth track record, but they're selling at a very high price. Even with their adjustment, they're still selling for 20 times earnings, which is fairly high. Now, the company that I really like, and I want to make a statement, I own it, I bought it recently, and I'm going to be buying more probably, is a company called Linn Energy. Linn Energy is a small company by oil standards, $3 billion market cap, is just turning profitable, projected to do so, has leveraged fairly hard. However, it is a well-run company. The stock has fallen 65%.
Isn't this a Texas company as well?
This is actually heavily or more in the Dakotas, but it's American. Mm-hmm. It's strictly American drilling. They have cut back their drilling, but they are very sound financially. Even though they're leveraged, they have good cash flow. They have also lined up Blackstone to finance their newer wells in a very good arrangement. Basically, here's a company that is now, it was as high as $34 a share, I think it was overvalued, but it's now at 11. Well, therefore, its probability of going back, it's projected by some to go back to 14. I think it could go back even higher, because just as we had said, EOG is selling at 20 times earnings. This company is selling around 6 or 7 times earnings. EOG is about 3 times its book value. This company is 80% of its book value. It is a tremendous bargain in the sense that there's been this overreaction that there's a lot of unsound little oil companies, and this is not one of them. They are not leverage crazy. They do not have, some companies already have announced they're going to stop all drilling because they don't have the finances to go forward.
Well, in the last 2 minutes, what else is out there that
well, there is some basic companies that really, right now, the company that's changed, now this is not buying low, Alcoa. Alcoa basically is changing themselves. They're still going to be a major manufacturer of the base metal, but they're doing higher things. They're doing metal especially for airplanes, for different sources. So their margins are tremendously improving. Their earnings are really improving. And the company is an interesting, you could almost say a turnaround. And it's not a risk company because it is a solid aluminum company. There's also a company called Chenery, which is in the natural gas business, but it's the exporting. They're the only company right now that can export natural gas. There's going to be 1 or 2 more, but the government's not approving them. And they've got a guaranteed, you could say, profit margin, even though they've invested like $11 billion, very large.
And that's a turnaround for America to be exporting natural gas instead of importing it.
Right now they don't make any money, but they've got signed contracts, primarily with Japan, for the next 20 years, and they get a guaranteed margin. So it's actually a very low risk. There's several. One of their divisions is a 5% guaranteed dividend. It's a low-risk company, but it also has a reward of the growth of exporting natural gas.
30 seconds. Anything else?
Last 2 is a company called Medimex and Lennox. MEDX is these are both medical companies, and Lennox, Lannett. Both of them are small. They aren't necessarily making a lot of money right now, but they are in dynamic fields. They're growing very rapidly. But this, again, back to our risk. There's greater risk here, but there's also greater reward.
Right. Well, thank you for being with us, and thank you for sharing your expertise and your knowledge with our viewers. We look forward to being with you again next week, and we want to thank you for being with us in the new year, Ed.
Okay, well, very good, Charlie. Very enjoyable chatting with you.
Okay. See you again next time.